it's a long road. I'm not saying I'm great now, but I'm saying I could be one day if I keep sticking to this grind. You know what I'm talking about? It's easier to think you're famous. It's harder to work for greatness. These kids nowadays get prevalence to the latest. So if the party started 8ish, I'm coming like next to...
What up, everybody? Welcome back to the J-Team Brand Podcast. And today we have a special guest here, Hans. I want you to introduce yourself. And by the way, we're in a new location. So if you see a little, some new furniture, we are currently partnered with Grand Low Cafe. So, you know, we're happy to announce that.
Yes, and, thank you. Shout out to Grand Low.
Back to you, Hans. Let's let Hans introduce yourself. Hans.
Yeah, my name is Hans Tapria. What would you like to know?
No, we just kind of wanted to introduce you to our audience.
Yeah.
So Hans, obviously we have a little bit of a history. Hans was the head of a program for Grand Street, correct? It was a entrepreneurship
For Henry Street.
That's
sorry.
Right. And it was an entrepreneurship program where it was kind of like a community Shark Tank. That's what I called it. So you were the head of that, and obviously you are the head of an NYU entrepreneurship program there as well, or business ownership. So talk a little bit about that and like how did you get into this? Because obviously you also run a business yourself.
So first and foremost, I've been an entrepreneur my entire career, from the days I was in college till now, and had this desire for some reason inside me to never get a job, and that's kind of how I thought when I was in.
How did you make that announcement to mom and dad?
You know, that's the beauty. They were actually pretty supportive.
No way.
And I think sometimes awesome. When you have that psychological support, because it wasn't as though we were coming from having a whole lot of capital or any capital to invest in a business or what have you, but I think that psychological support makes such a difference. And their words were just chase your dreams. And,
awesome.
You know, when I was in college, I think one of the drivers for entrepreneurs, one is that you want to have some purpose, make some change, do something that moves humanity forward to some extent. There's that playing within you. But also entrepreneurship is so much about autonomy and defining who you are on your own terms versus having to conform to another particular culture or brand identity. And so those, if I look back in hindsight, I couldn't articulate this then, but if I look back in hindsight, that's what I was feeling inside. I met some of my co-founders when I was in college, one who was in college with me.
Nice.
And we built a few businesses over the next 20 years, which I can talk about more as well. One is a brand called Tasti-bites, which is the largest Asian and Indian food brand in North America. We do ready-to-eat meals. And now part of the Mars system. Mars acquired our business.
The supermarkets now.
Mars is the best known for confectionery and chocolate, correct? But they also are the biggest pet food owners, operators in the world. They're also big in the foods industry as well. So they own Uncle Ben's Rice, for example.
Okay.
Nice.
And so we are a meals operator, a meals provider, and that kind of fit well in their foods division. So we built that over 20 years. Now that's part of the overall Mars group and Mars system. And around that time of that transition is when I started teaching at NYU as well. So I teach social impact, social entrepreneurship. We always saw ourselves as a business, which was building a business with purpose. And so I teach that at NYU today as well.
That's awesome. And so how did you get that opportunity with NYU? I mean, did they come to you? Did you go to them and say, hey, I have this like amazing idea and program that I'd like to be ahead of?
It just was pretty organic. I had a friend who was teaching there from my college days. He introduced me to the social entrepreneurship program there. It just so happens that social entrepreneurship program had a course that was going to India. Our factory at Tasti-bites is in India.
Awesome.
So we served as a partner company for that class. And then as we got into discussions with faculty there, it became apparent that there was a need for more experiential learning.
Yeah.
And so what I really do and have brought to the university is more courses on experiential learning. And what we mean by that is really taking theory and applying it out in the field. And so when it comes to starting a business, there's no better way to start a business, to learn how to start a business than to do it.
Just to do it.
And we've spoken about that before. Definitely. And so with students, how do we replicate that experience? Because so much of this is applied. And so those are the kinds of courses that I teach there today. So that's how it started. It was rather organic. And then, I started building a few more courses over the year and then came on board faculty there.
That's awesome.
How long do you see yourself kind of teaching and advising and going down that lane with your business as well? Because that's a lot.
Well, yeah. No, I have transitioned, to an extent out of a day-to-day role in the business, and so that's helped a bit. I now teach primarily, and teaching is something that
Is that like your give back?
You learn. Well, I think it's satisfying.
Yeah.
But I think we as teachers, we learn a whole lot more than I think our students do at one level, because that's
it's all walks of life. All sorts
you
of mindsets.
you get a sense of where the world is going over the next 10, 15, 20 years.
What's your perspective on that? You're entrepreneurs.
We'll talk about that, because students are ultimately the future, right? They're your future
Absolutely.
consumer. You get a sense of where the world's going culturally. You get get a sense of where the world's going from a consumer and business perspective, and of course you, in preparation for teaching, you have to explore a subject deeply. Now, in my case, having been in business, I was taking my knowledge, which was deep in one particular area,
Okay.
and over the past few years, I've had the opportunity as a professor to kind of go wide and understand what is going on with businesses that are adjacent to what I did, and other businesses that have strong purposes or have deep social impact. And so by studying that, your perspective broadens. And so for me, it's been a broadening of perspective, and has allowed me to learn so much about the broader world around, while at the same time having that depth of knowledge in one operating business.
And it also kind of opens up the broader of like economics, like you said, the social impact, and then you go into economics. At least for me, that's what it's done for me. Like, it's actually all, like, real estate has opened up my horizon of economics and what it brings to the table as far as that goes.
Yeah, so you get a first-hand sense of what's going on.
Exactly.
So do you consider yourself an investor?
No, I'm an entrepreneur.
Entrepreneur.
I see myself as somebody who loves to create businesses for humanity, and to help others create businesses for humanity.
So I would love to know, how do you decide which different businesses you want to create, or that you want to help others to create?
As a professor, I work with a whole variety of students and entrepreneurs and others. What I try and encourage students to think about, and anybody who's aspiring to start a business to think about, is, in today's context, is your business one that moves humanity forward? And I would argue that there are lots of businesses which may give back a lot, don't get me wrong, but actually don't move humanity forward. I would argue that sugary sodas don't move humanity forward.
That's true.
They actually,
they're taking away years of humanity.
Yeah, taking away years of it. Diabetes kills 3 million people a year. That's more than guns. And so,
that's insane.
It's
That's
a problem.
That's an interesting fact.
Yeah, it's an interesting
fact.
fact.
Didn't even think of that. Wow.
Yeah,
3 million
3 million people a year diabetes kills.
Over
and
diabetes. And there's no war on Pepsi.
There isn't. And so,
that's insane.
And that's a problem. So I would think, I try to encourage those who are thinking about entrepreneurship to think about, is this a business that is protecting humanity, for humanity, or is it one that is capitalizing or taking advantage of human vulnerabilities?
What if the creation of opportunity? Because I'm an entrepreneur.
Yes.
You're part of the reason why Three Lens Media even exists. Thank you very much for that,
Thank
by
you.
the way, for believing in us. But my ideals behind entrepreneurship would be, how much opportunity can I create other than my own? So what opportunity can I create for the business that I'm going to be working with? What opportunity can I create for the people around me?
Yeah.
And that's my, I guess, social impact. In essence, when you first going into entrepreneurship, obviously the capital is not there, so you're not per se a part of an organization that gives back to eating or something like that. So that being said, how do you feel about that approach?
I think that's huge.
Okay.
And I think that's a deep contribution. I think that's first and foremost the responsibility of a business owner, which is to provide. And if you see yourself in that context, you are serving a greater mission. Having said that, I think that's the base level. I think businesses also need to think about their impact on other stakeholders, on the environment, on society at large, on things like inequality, on health and wellness for their consumers. We're now seeing big tech under fire because of hook technologies which suck you in. And yes, I as a consumer should be responsible and should not get hooked in, but I am vulnerable to doing so, and so I end up falling into depression or what have you, something that could happen to a consumer. So businesses need to think about their impact on all stakeholders in addition to providing opportunity.
That's awesome, man. I mean, I love the ideas of like social impact just in general. I mean, because for me, that's the most important. And you say it, we always say it, like trying to bring financial awareness to the minority community.
Yeah,
A big
people
reason
buying
why I
and
joined real estate is to understand, you know, what was the dynamics behind it. And then once I learned ownership, now for me is like the information that I'm learning, giving that back up.
Yeah,
So-
especially in this day and age when there are so many young people that are now kind of
Easily
destined
influenced.
to be first time home buyers. For us, that's like kind of like our audience when it comes to real estate. Like those are the people that we want to speak to, and we want to be able to, because we also look forward to that in the future.
Agreed.
So why not give that information back to people that we want to have for ourselves? You know? So no, I think that's wonderful. Teaching's a hard thing. I won't lie. I'm kind of fascinated how you kind of moved from entrepreneurship, which you still do, but now are teaching. Like I would love to be able to do something like that in the future. I just kind of also feel like that's a tough lane to go in because, you know.
Any frustrations that you come
No.
across? Like,
No.
is it just simple human interaction?
No,
Like,
it's an amazing thing. I think what we need to do a lot more of is to help students and young people like yourselves do what they love and not do what others do.
I like that.
And that's the biggest
the
problem
pursuit
we
of
have.
happiness,
And
not
a
the
lot
pursuit of
people realize
capital
that.
and currency.
There's a rat race out there, and I understand it, and I get it, and I can sympathize with it. But what are the tools we can employ to prevent people from just doing what everybody else is doing, and doing what they love? And even if they don't know what they love, because a lot of us don't know what we love,
Trying.
to find out what we love, to explore what we may love, do it through trying a bunch of different things, through observing the world at large, through asking a lot of questions, and you end up finding what you love, and then pursuing it, because if you do that, of course, there's no better route to happiness.
I'm gonna go a little off subject because you're obviously an entrepreneur and CEO in high places. Who are some of the coolest people you've been in the room with that you were like, what? You had to ask yourself, damn, I'm really in the same room as the CEO? Has there ever been a moment like that?
No, I'm not. I don't come from that
No?
perspective. In my world, in business, it's about making a product.
So there was nobody you ever looked up to, like as far as like an entrepreneur before you got into the business?
We've met some interesting people along the way, but our primary role is to work with people who come from a whole variety of backgrounds to make things and sell things. So my background, as surprising as this may sound, because you're sort of, you have this impression, this high places. I've hung out in warehouses and distribution locations and trucks and factories and farms, and that's what we do. We build and sell and move product, and there's an immense joy to making a sale. You've experienced that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Both in real estate as well as in three-lens.
It's a thrill behind it.
It's an immense sale. And so for me, that's the joy, A. And B, it's the joy of just being around, everyday people versus celebrities and so on. So
Not more so the celebrities. I'm more so thinking of like business entrepreneurs, people that are like, wow, like I'm actually creating business with a Mars, something like that. Like those things, those kind of goals sets.
I guess maybe even a question is there, I think what he's trying to say is like, is there somebody, in one person or maybe people in particular that have actually inspired you to?
That has influenced you in your entrepreneurship.
My partners primarily, our teams primarily. Outside of the organization, there have been many where you get a nugget or two from.
You pick up nuggets on the way.
We get nuggets, like you get nuggets from Steven Spielberg, you may get a nugget from Steve Jobs. I wouldn't say there's any one particular kind of leading or guiding influence. outside of my immediate colleagues and partners.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how long? Give me, I guess, number of years. How many years have you been doing business?
So we built our business over 20 years.
Wow. And you've stuck with the same partners.
Correct. The
That's
same
amazing.
partners, which
That's
is
an amazing.
Which
That's
is unusual. I was gonna say,
super
very
unusual.
unusual.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So there must be like an insane amount of trust and understanding and respect
Oh,
there, because
huge,
like,
huge.
I mean, obviously that's built over 20 years
Well, that's
too,
what
and
keeps
there's
you together too.
Mhm.
Because as partners, you will always come from a wide variety of thoughts and backgrounds and disagreements and so on. But if you do share core values, and we use this word values a lot, and it's overused almost today. But when I mean values, I mean, you know, your approach to life is similar, as in you're not going to do something for the quick buck. You're looking at the long term. As an
Yes.
example of a value, you are not going to participate in unethical business activity. You're not going to be corrupt. You're not going to be... Those things, actually, surprisingly enough, are sometimes not all that common. And so if you find people who share those values,
you have to stick
then you're
by
going to
them.
be fine. Another value is how political. A lot of people may have good values as in do business well, but are very political in organizations.
Very
or
scary in
or
those
looking for attention or to be the one. You know, and if you're working with those kinds of people, then you're going to have problems along the way. And those are sometimes values we don't talk about.
So you have to look for intent, almost in
Correct,
essence.
correct. It's an approach to life. It's a way of living. It's a way of being, in
Yeah.
addition to what we talk about values.
What do you feel like are some struggles that maybe you may have faced in business when you first started versus now?
Well, you know, we didn't take salaries for a long time. I was running for my landlord. You know, so that's a bit of you guys are in real
Like I'm running for my
estate.
student loan.
You know how
Yeah,
how
no.
that feels.
Part-time gigs on the side,
We
man.
got good at that.
Keep the lights
Yeah.
on.
Luckily, we were in the food business, so we always had food.
That's true.
We were in meals. I mean, it's tough, you know, but
It's a grind.
But it's fun. Like there's a fun to not having money.
You know, I
There's an
like that you say
appreciation
that
factor,
because
yeah.
honestly, even though you stress about it, low key,
Yeah.
right? I agree with you on that.
There's
like,
a fun to
It leaves a
You'll
want
never-
and a hustle for
you
it.
know, sometimes I see people, and no offense to anybody that comes from money or has money.
Yeah.
You know, I see when I don't have it, it's like it's okay. Like I'm not, you know what I'm saying? Not to say like I'm used to that,
Yeah.
but I work very hard for
Yeah.
what it is that I have.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree with you when you make
Yeah.
that comment, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of people might not understand it.
May not
but
understand that.
Yeah.
But there's a certain, particularly, and it's only the case if you are enjoying what you're doing and you know you're working towards some larger goal.
Exactly.
Then it
Exactly.
is. There's
Then
a
it's like
joy.
whatever, it'll come when it's supposed to
it's
come.
it's
you know.
almost the struggle is a strange
Yeah.
joy, and not to demean
Yeah.
the struggles that people go through. I mean, there's a
Because there are
lot of
Oh, it's
extreme
real.
struggles.
extreme
No, no.
struggle.
It's real, but there's some joy in it
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so really quickly before you go, what is your family's background? So like, because I know you travel a lot. I mean, you just came back into town from traveling. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Like, what's your family background?
Yeah.
Like, your extreme work ethic. Obviously, you said your family and your parents kind of, you know, supported you throughout the whole thing. Talk about that. Like, what was your
Yeah.
parenting life like?
Yeah.
Your childhood?
Yeah, no, it was an interesting childhood. My mom and dad are first-generation immigrants from India.
Okay.
My father's a physician. My mom worked with him as his office manager, and they built their
Power
small
couple.
business over the years. But they had their struggles. They came here in the late 60s, so my two siblings and I were born here after they moved here. We moved around a lot. My dad is a little bit adventurous, and he wanted to try out and live in new places all the time.
That's super cool.
So I was born in Chicago, but I ended up going to 10 schools.
Oh, wow.
And we lived in Las Vegas. I did my third grade in Vegas. I did
Oh,
my
wow.
fourth grade partly in the Middle East. I did my 5th through 8th grades in West Texas, and we were vegetarians in beach country.
Oh my
Jesus.
God.
West Texas, not the big city of Amarillo, but Pampa, Texas, a very small town there.
Okay.
I spent a year in India in my 9th grade, and then I
Wow.
went to another 3 high schools in Illinois, in southern Illinois, not too far from the Kentucky border,
Okay.
for high school. I mean, we were basically Indian vegetarians growing up in Trump country. What is today Trump?
How did
country, yeah.
did that affect you, the bouncing around
I was
as a
gonna say,
kid?
as far
Oh,
as
it could be
like
traumatic.
school.
Was it traumatic
Well,
for
you
you?
know, it luckily wasn't traumatic. It could be traumatic.
Okay.
It was difficult. Luckily, you know, in my mom, we had a lot of psychological support. She
Okay.
somehow believed in us, and she guided us through that because she wasn't.
Oh, that's
particularly
awesome
happy
parenting.
about this either. She
Yeah.
was not. This
But
was
she
no
made
joy
the best
for her.
of it and didn't let it kind of
and
affect
she didn't
you.
let it show.
Yeah.
She never
Strength
let
of a
it-
woman,
she never
boy.
let it show. No, absolutely. And so, so I grew up multiple countries, multiple cities, lots of schools. That helps in some ways.
Mhm.
It has
Gives you an
its downsides.
interesting perspective,
Yeah,
right?
you
You're very
don't,
cultured.
yeah, you don't
Yeah.
worry
So
about
we
things
say.
as much.
Yeah.
You
seem super chill too. It's like the energetic vibe is like, you know,
Been there,
I've seen that, done that.
seen that.
today I have a wife and two daughters. My wife comes from a public health background.
Awesome.
She's worked also everywhere. She grew up in Southern Africa. She went to college here and in the UK, and we met in India when I was based. Actually, I had moved from India, but I used to go back and forth. to
So the
India,
traveling helped.
And so the traveling,
Traveling helped. You ran into your soulmate.
We met there. We have a daughter who's almost 6 and one who's 3.5.
Oh, little ones. That's sweet, man. Oh, that's good, man. I listen.
I was gonna say, do you
Yeah.
have business talks with your daughters?
No.
You feel like that's the lane you want them to go in, like being an entrepreneur, or what they
I
want to
do.
do?
I've recently tried to give them some background on what I do. And so when we go to the supermarket, you know, you see food product or see our food product, give them a
Yeah.
sense of how
like,
much
hey,
we
that's
made,
us.
So more recently, where they
That's
have
cool.
a little more context of how the world generally operates.
Yeah. I mean, at 6 and 3, they're not gonna soak in as much as you would want them
Kids
to
are very
soak in.
smart.
Oh, yeah,
They're
yeah,
very
Yeah.
smart.
No,
you know?
you start little things definitely.
Yeah,
Like, hey,
they-
sell this
they get it.
candy. No.
Yeah.
They
Nice.
get it.
No, that's awesome. That's great.
Nice. Well, you know,
Hans.
you can hand over the empire to.
Yeah, and they're gonna have to. I mean, somebody's gonna have to learn how to run it, you know.
Good.
But Hans, we appreciate you
Thank you.
so much
Thank
for
you
coming
for
on the
having
show.
me.
And as usual, guys, wait. But before we go, if you want to leave the audience with any, words of wisdom, something that you kind of want to share and inspire,
jewels,
something a
anything.
little key, or just say, have a good day. I don't know.
You know, I would just maybe reiterate what I was saying earlier, which is that we all need to somehow figure out how to follow our own paths and not the paths of others. And I think it's a struggle for every one of us, even the very best who's at doing this, to do what you love, to do what you're passionate about. Everyone keeps saying it, we all know it, and yet we don't do it. And I'd invite folks to think about, what are those tools? How do we be crazy? How do we do what we want? How do we not fall into a rat race? At NYU, at Stern, we have a lot of young people who decide to go into finance, and many of them don't actually want to. It's one thing if you want to, no issues, but a lot of them don't actually want to. And they do it just because everyone around them is doing it, and they would feel like they were not part of a community, or not part of a tribe for doing that. And it's natural for us to want to be part of a tribe or be part of a community. But how do we be part of a broader human community versus a community that just defines itself by a particular profession or particular hobby? And that's the big question. That's one of the big questions for humanity that I would invite everybody.
Absolutely. Not labeling yourself. No labels, guys. No
Got
labels.
it. You got it.
Thank you guys for listening to the J-Team Brand Podcast. And as usual, please share, subscribe, and leave some comments.
And thank you, Grand Lo Cafe.
And thank you, Grand Lo Cafe. Absolutely.
Love
This
it.
this space is
Thank
awesome.
you for coming.
Thank you.
Hans. We
Thank you.
appreciate
My pleasure as always.
Love you guys. Take care.
Thanks.
Man, it's a long road. I'm not saying I'm great now, but I'm saying I could be one day if I keep sticking to this grind. You know what I'm talking about? It's easier to think you're famous. It's harder to work for greatness. These kids nowadays give prevalence to the latest.